I'm Connor Ruebusch, and if you are interested in the finer points of face punching, you've come to the right place. This is Heavy Hands. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Heavy Hands, your one-spot shop for what makes them drop, the only podcast dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Do we have any more taglines? I don't think so. Hello, I'm your host, Connor Ruebusch. With me is Patrick Wyman. Pat, how are you doing today?
I love that intro. I apologize for a couple of weeks ago coming down with the hammer on your smooth styling intro.
Oh, yeah.
This is fantastic. I think you should do more of it. And now we're probably going to get a flood of responses that tell us, "Oh God, no! Don't do more of those."
Please don't do that ever again.
Yeah.
No,
now that I'm fully on board with this and I've acclimated to it.
Yeah, I think probably the one the other week that baffled and confused you, not understandably so, I should say. I think that was probably inspired by me listening to way too much Chapo Trap House and just hearing a lot of white guys talking like rappers. So I think that motivated
you were watching the Eli Lake or listening to the Eli Lake episodes.
Yeah, probably. It's probably something like that. Saying stuff like lit, even though I have no melanin in my body. Yeah, you know how it goes. But anyway, this is not the racial theory of dialect podcast. This is the Heavy Hands podcast where we talk about fights. And
you don't have a phrenology take here to open the episode.
You know what? I do, but I'm going to wait till after we cover all of UFC 211. Like, I want to get that bump for this big card, and then I will start dropping the hot phrenology takes. Because let's be honest, like, there's a reason that Brazilians do so well in MMA, and it does have something to do with skull shape. So, let's talk about UFC.
I mean, we may have gone a little further down that rabbit hole than much of our audience is comfortable with.
Sorry, guys. It's just jokes.
Just so everybody knows, and to our lovely Brazilian listeners, these are jokes about god-awful racial science. Yeah. These are jokes.
Yeah, I don't have the skull shape to be racist. Like, my brain does not, I don't have it, you know? Some people have a racism gene, and I don't. I don't see color, Pat. Let's talk about UFC 211. That's the card we are here to discuss today. We got a big one. UFC 211 is just bananas. It is easily the best card of 2017, up and down from top to bottom, and one of the best cards the UFC's done in recent memory. Like, it stacks up with cards like UFC 205, ones that we really remember as being great. And we've got a number of big fights that we are going to be covering the top two next week. But this week, we're going to get into two of the most exciting ones on the undercard of the main card. We're going to be talking about Frankie Edgar versus Yair Rodriguez, a featherweight/lightweight mainstay, former lightweight champion versus one of the most hyped and most exciting prospects in the featherweight division, if not in the entire UFC. And then we're going to talk about the welterweight number one contender scrap between Demian Maia, the man who is unfortunately having to fight for a shot at the title, even though he really should get it. He's in dangerous waters, much like his fellow jiu-jitsu practitioner, Jacare Souza, at middleweight. And he'll be fighting Jorge Masvidal. I almost called him George Masvidal. Learning how to pronounce Brazilian names and Portuguese words has ruined my ability to say Spanish. It really has. Like, I think I've probably called a couple of people named Jose upon reading their name, and it makes me look like a dumb American when really I'm just trying to be cosmopolitan.
Yeah, really, you're a Romance language ecumenist at this point.
Yeah, I'm just expanding my ability to pronounce different languages, but that is always like the exact wrong way to pronounce a name of Spanish origin.
This is what a fantastic card UFC 211 is. It's not going to do, and we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, but like, it's not going to do the kind of numbers that something like UFC 205 did. But for those of us who are inside the bubble, yeah, it's a huge card because it's got so many like longtime veterans and former champions, things like that. Like, this is a really, really excellent card topped with two fantastic fights. And as you mentioned, we're going to talk about those next week, but like, this is too big for us to get everything into 1 week of it.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to split it up a bit.
We have to spread it out. And if you know that you are in love with MMA, if you're not worried about where your relationship is headed, if you know that you're in for the long haul and you're not a casual fan, this card is just an absolute treat for you. That's how Pat and I feel, that it's just a treat for those of us who are really into MMA, because it's just full of great fights. I should not forget to mention that at the end of today's show, we're going to talk about Anthony Joshua's stunning, and some might call it a comeback win, although both guys had to come back, his stunning victory over Wladimir Klitschko last weekend, which was just a humdinger. As the British commentary team put it, just a humdinger, a barn burner of a chess match, of a brilliant heavyweight battle between two of the best heavyweights in the world, and we have to talk about that on the show. So we'll cover that at the end of the lineup today. Let's start off, though, with Frankie Edgar and Yair Rodriguez. Pat, give me the introduction for this fight.
So this is Yair Rodriguez's big step up in the featherweight division. This is a guy that the UFC has been grooming since he won the Ultimate Fighter Latin America back in 2014. Mm-hmm. They have slowly but surely moved him up the ladder, giving him slightly increasing challenges as he goes up. In his last fight, he got to beat the corpse of BJ Penn into oblivion. And now here he is, right on the cusp of the featherweight elite, and he's got a tall task in front of him in the form of former lightweight champion and two-time featherweight title challenger, Frankie the Answer Edgar. So the question to me here is, A, what does Frankie Edgar have left in the tank at this point? Because he's been a pro for 12 years. He's been in the ringer. He's been through a lot of tough matchups. He fought his last fight injured. He had both a back injury and a knee injury when he fought Jeremy Stephens in November. And Rodriguez is getting markedly better in every outing. Every time you see Yair Rodriguez, he is better than the guy that you saw on film.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is the crux of this matchup. Where is Edgar at physically? Can his craft overcome the size, speed, sheer creativity, and violence that Yair Rodriguez is capable of?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It has not looked to me like Frankie Edgar has really slowed down. For a guy who fought with half of his body falling apart, like he was being held together by Scotch tape, he looked pretty good to me against Jeremy Stephens. In fact, I think Frankie Edgar is one of those fighters who is truly great, because even as he, surely passes his prime, being 35, when did he debut? In 2005.
2005, yeah. He's a 12-year pro.
Yeah, 12-year pro, 35 years old. Frankie Edgar is a guy who thinks about the game in such a way that he is still getting better as a fighter, even after what should be his physical prime. You know what I mean? Like, he is still adding tools to his game.
So the way that he has largely gotten around that is by getting more efficient.
Yeah.
So that has been his big thing. He used to be, and I noticed this a lot when I was rewatching the Stephens fight for us to talk about it today. He used to be in and out a lot more. Now he's a lot more, it's a lot tighter with his lateral movement, and he's not stepping back nearly as far. So he doesn't have as much distance to cover. That has, I think, disguised the fact that he is not quite as straight line fast as he used to be.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that really stood out, the reason I bring this up, to me in that Jeremy Stephens fight, was his defense. Frankie Edgar has never had great defense, and he has always, because he's so quick and has such great stamina, has always relied on moving to defend himself. Like, that's been his thing. Frankie Edgar used to be the guy who, he would look like a great boxer because he had this lateral movement. He would step in and out. But if somebody threw when he was throwing, he would get hurt. You know what I mean? That would happen like every time that happened. He would get hit and hurt. He had no way of avoiding the shot other than stepping out of range. And that takes a lot of energy. It's the kind of thing that Frankie can't do that much anymore. But in the Jeremy Stephens fight, I noticed a lot more of really smart blocks. Like his eyes were extremely good in that fight. That he would throw a shot at Jeremy Stephens, he'd see the counter coming, throw his block up, catch it, and then pivot and take another angle and force Stephens to reset. And also his head movement, rolling under punches, slipping as he was throwing, and even when he wasn't throwing. That was there in the Mendez fight as well. Like, I think that Frankie Edgar still looks markedly better than he used to. And I think it's even more interesting that is the product, we assume, of him not being able to fight the way he did in his youth. Like, it has forced him to become a better fighter. I would say a better fighter.
Absolutely. There's no question to me that he is much more skillful than he was in the past. We've talked about defense before as the kind of thing that it is the last piece to come around in fighters games, because in MMA you have so many other things that you have to learn. Even just learning to be a competent offensive striker in MMA, if that's not your base, can take a very long time.
Yeah.
But it tends to be the last thing to fall into place, is really good layered defense, not just one defensive layer like distance or angles, but to have the combination of parries and blocks and head movement and angles and distance management, all of that. To be a good defensive fighter, you have to do all of those things, and it takes a long time to put all of those things together into something like a coherent package. And Edgar has done that.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, Stevens is a pretty low output striker, and so if you are confident and you're sharp technically, you can pick his shots off one or two at a time.
As is Chad Mendes.
Yeah, exactly. So those are not necessarily the most difficult fighters in the world to look good defensively against. And that's kind of going to be the challenge that Rodriguez throws at him, is that there is going to be a lot of offense coming in Edgar's direction.
Yeah, because if we're talking about these adaptations as being sort of the result of a need to be more efficient because of a physical decline, how does that help him against somebody who is having the exact opposite of a physical decline? You know what I mean? Someone who is hale and young, and we have to say, I know we say this every time we talk about Yair Rodriguez, but it's because before he fought Caceres, I think we both mentioned that, boy, can he keep this kind of fight up? Yair Rodriguez has some of the best stamina I've ever seen.
It is absurd.
The way
off the charts,
it doesn't make sense that he can fight with as much like reckless abandon as far as what kinds of strikes he's willing to throw and when, that it's like all high kicks and spinning attacks and just long loping steps. Like everything is so high energy. And he did it for 5 rounds against Alex Caceres at altitude. So
Rodriguez, I think as physical specimens go, I think Rodriguez is the rarest type because he's tall, incredibly explosive, and has great stamina.
Yeah.
It's rare to find a guy who isn't like thickly built. Like you look at Mirsad Bektic and you expect him to be an explosive guy, right? Because he's carrying a lot of muscle. What generates explosive power? Muscle, right? Like you expect a dude who's built like that, or like Tyron Woodley, to be quick and explosive in that sense. It's rare to see a guy who's not built thickly with that kind of explosiveness, like John Jones too. You know, like John Jones is that same kind of long, rangy, quick athlete. And MMA, frankly, does not have a lot of those.
No, it does not. Conor McGregor also belongs in that category, probably.
Yeah, pretty explosive. Not explosive in quite the same way as Yair Rodriguez.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that Rodriguez's athleticism is off the charts, and so we basically have a guy who, I think this fight's a really interesting potential, either a passing of the torch or a holding of the gates moment, because Frankie Edgar is the guy who used to be all athleticism, who has slowly but surely added skills to his game to make himself a more well-rounded fighter, but he is now facing off against somebody who is at the start of that process, who is extremely athletic, but is still just learning to apply a lot of the skills that will eventually become staples of his game.
Yeah, I think it's hard to overstate early in his career how creative the stuff that Frankie was doing really was at that point, in kind of the broad context of MMA. He was putting transitions together. Like, he is of the Georges St. Pierre influenced generation of fighters who took the kinds of stuff that GSP was doing in terms of entries and setups and transitions from one phase to another and took them to a step beyond that. Like, Frankie does not get enough credit, and now that he's kind of nearing the end of his career, I think we should start to give him more for this, for being a true innovator, for being the kind of guy that, like, every fighter who came after him had to look at what Frankie Edgar did and say, like, oh, okay, this is now a thing that I have to account for in my game plans.
Yeah, definitely. So how do you see this fight playing out stylistically? Because we have Edgar, who cannot move as quickly and cannot do as much as he used to, and has developed a game that is suited for the pocket, versus Rodriguez, who is a guy who never stops moving and does everything based on his athletic ability, but who is just barely scratching the surface of what he can do in the pocket. My general feeling is that Rodriguez probably has the option on whether or not he will engage Edgar in Edgar's range, and that if he forces Frankie to chase him, he can do a lot of what, I mean, not exactly the same, but he can give Edgar a lot of the same obstacles that Jose Aldo gave him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
By just making him chase. That's not a thing that Frankie Edgar likes to do or does particularly well, especially now.
He is willing, but capability is kind of a different thing. Like if you had to pick out everything that Frankie Edgar can do, what is he worst at? It's pressuring and making the most of those opportunities, in large part because when Frankie gets you to the fence, if you're a tall, elusive, quick-footed fighter like Jose Aldo or not that Aldo's tall, but if you're an elusive, quick-footed fighter like Aldo, or you can add elusiveness and quick-footedness to height like Rodriguez can, the problem is that when Frankie gets you to the fence, he does not have the kind of one-hitter quitter power or like a real super explosive takedown game to make you pay when you make those mistakes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So even if Frankie succeeds in backing you up and taking your space away and everything, Frankie is not the kind of guy who's going to really punish you when that happens. Like he can control you and he can take away and he can limit your offense by doing that, but it's hard for him to really put a lot of doubt in your mind to really hurt you in those spaces. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. He had he had a problem like that. I think he tried to pressure when he fought Ben Henderson and had a similar problem. Like, what do you do when you've shut somebody down, but you can't like destroy them? You can't really make them pay the consequences. Like in a fight like this, the consequences are going to be Frankie scoring a takedown. And while I think that would probably make sense, we also have to consider Rodriguez's ground game, his scrambling, his sweeps, his submission offense. And if he gets on top, he's extremely dangerous. Great ground and pound, hits hard. I don't know, man. Like it's also another thing that jumps to my mind is the fact that it's only a 3-round fight, which is a shame. Like it should be a 5-round fight. I wish that it was because it's good enough to warrant it. But the fact that it's 3 rounds, like we don't have to worry too much about Rodriguez's stamina, at least until like maybe he gets a big head and stops working hard and loses it, which could happen with somebody who's a really talented prospect. We've seen it happen many times before. But on Frankie's side, this is a guy who has always excelled at building his wins round by round, who makes you react to something, a takedown, a sidestep, a punch, and then builds the rest of his tactics off of your reaction. So everything is like a flow chart being put together on the fly. And that benefits from having more time. Like the longer you spend in the cage with Frankie Edgar, the more he's going to be able to dominate you. That's happened in like with Gray Maynard. Both of the last 2 times he fought him, it happened with BJ Penn. He was
more successful the second time he fought Aldo than he was the first time.
Yeah.
His second fight with Benson Henderson was much more competitive than their first fight was.
And in both fights, he got better as the fight went on. Likewise, his first fight with BJ Penn. Everything that Frankie Edgar does gets better with each successive round. And so with only 3 to work, you have to give a lot more weight to the athletic advantages of Yair Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's going to take Frankie, I would guess, probably 3 to 5 minutes just to sense Rodriguez's speed.
Yeah.
Because he is so fast. And to get it's hard to overstate too, the distance here. Like Frankie has mostly been lucky that he hasn't been fighting monstrous guys at featherweight, Let's look at this real quick. Let's run through Edgar's list of opponents here. So he fought Jeremy Stevens, who is, I want to say 5'8". He fought Jose Aldo, who's 5'7". 5'6" Chad Mendez, 5'6" Uriah Faber, 5'8" Cub Swanson, 5'8" or 5'9" BJ Penn, and then 5'10" Charles Oliveira. So this will actually Yair Rodriguez will be the tallest guy ever that Frankie Edgar has fought.
How tall is Rodriguez?
5'11".
Because even like Ben Henderson and Gray Maynard aren't that tall. Like the guys he was fighting at lightweight aren't that big.
Yeah, Maynard is 5'8" and Henderson is 5'9". So this will be the tallest opponent of Edgar's career. This will be outside, I think, of Chad Mendez. This will be the most explosively athletic opponent that Edgar has ever faced. Certainly the one with the most dedicated kicking arsenal, I would say. So there's going to be a lot of ground for him to cover. There's going to be a big speed edge for Rodriguez, especially at this phase of Edgar's career. What do you think is Frankie's path to victory here? Like if you were Mark Henry, a guy that we've interviewed, we know how smart he is, we know how dedicated he is. How do you go about winning this fight for Frankie Edgar?
So if I'm Frankie Edgar, I fight a little bit against type. I try to put some pressure on Rodriguez, and I look to catch every single kick that he throws and convert it into either a takedown or a pocket boxing exchange. I try to turn every single one of his attacks. Like I think about where am I most likely to get this fight where it favors me? Because I think you still have to favor Frankie Edgar if he's on top on the ground. Like Rodriguez is not a chump there, but like nobody beats Frankie Edgar when he has top position.
Frankie Edgar has become one of the better top control artists in this division, and one of the better top control artists in the sport. Frankly,
yes.
I think if he gets on top, he can shut down Rodriguez's guard game and take him out of it for minutes at a time.
Yes. So what I'm looking is to try to expose the fragility of a young athletic fighter's confidence. Put pressure on him, counter all of his best attacks, which are his kicks, with takedowns. Like make sure that he knows that anything he does well, he's going to be punished for attempting. Yeah. And try to get it to the ground, where I think Frankie probably has the best chance of winning, not because Rodriguez is worst there, but because that is where the gap between their athletic abilities means the least, where Frankie has him in a static position and he can just basically use skill to overcome that athletic ability of Rodriguez.
I think that's exactly the right response. And to build off your point about countering kicks and countering with boxing, that's how you slow the pace, right? Is by taking Rodriguez out of his flow and by forcing him to think about what he does. If Rodriguez is thinking, then it's Frankie's fight, because Frankie thinks faster. Yeah. The only fighters that Frankie has ever fought who can think faster than him is Jose Aldo. It's the only one he's ever fought, right?
Yeah.
I think that's probably fair.
I think that's absolutely fair. Yeah.
So frankly, Aldo, both times that Edgar has fought him, he has fought the veteran late career version of Aldo, the one who has all of that accumulated experience with which to deal with what Frankie's showing him. Yair Rodriguez does not have that.
Yeah.
He does not have the advantage of all of that accumulated experience against elite opposition. He hasn't been in a ton of 5-round fights against guys with a lot of depth of skill. Like if Frankie can slow Rodriguez's decision-making process down, then suddenly the physical gap is not going to be as big. If he can make Rodriguez freeze, if he can freeze him with feints and fakes, if he can go from strikes to takedowns, if he can use his lateral movement to cut angles and get inside. Because I think as fast as Rodriguez's feet are, there are still some fundamental issues with his footwork that are going to take some time to work out.
It's very much like a old school Anthony Pettis. Like the tight technical footwork is not there. It's all reliant on speed and sort of prescience, but not on, it's just not very fundamentally sound. And you could say that about a lot of aspects of his game, but basically everything that applies to boxing, like footwork, head movement, combination punching, all those things are things he does with a natural feel, but has clearly not been schooled that carefully in them.
Yeah, he's better than he was with his footwork probably a year ago. Like if you look at his footwork in the Feely fight versus his footwork in the Penn fight, there is a notable marked difference that says he's getting better at those fundamentals. But
go back and watch him get lit up by Leonardo Morales. Like that would not happen today.
Yeah, but the gap between what Yair Rodriguez has picked up since the Leonardo Morales fight and now, and Frankie Edgar's fundamentally sound footwork is enormous. Like that's a huge gap. Like you could pause time for 2 or 3 years and Yair Rodriguez still probably wouldn't be anywhere close to Edgar's
needs
level.
A hyperbolic time chamber to make up that gap.
Yeah. So, but now with that said, I think I still favor Rodriguez here, kind of on that basis. I think that is a lot of distance for Frankie to have to cover. That's a lot of speed difference. There's a big difference in what they're capable of pace wise at this point. I think Frankie is going to have a lot of trouble getting close to Rodriguez's hips. And even if he's catching those kicks, they're still going to be damaging because Rodriguez kicks so hard and so fast. Like we saw that a lot. Remember in especially the first Henderson fight where he was catching a lot of kicks, Henderson was still chewing up Edgar's legs and body, even though Edgar was catching.
Not everyone has the balance, and the flexibility of Benson Henderson, but Yair Rodriguez probably does. That's to have your kicks caught and not just start falling down or losing balance or having to scramble. Frankie is maybe not excellent at turning a larger person's kicks into takedowns if they don't want him to, So.
Because what we saw from him in that fight, and this is something I think that's going to be especially relevant here, is when Frankie tried to counter, especially with punches. He did a better job of countering with takedowns, but when he tried to counter with punches, he came up way short. Like, he had a lot of trouble catching the kick and then moving in with the punch. And I think that could be a problem here because Rodriguez is even taller and longer than Henderson was.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I think I would love to see Frankie Edgar win this. Like, I like Yair Rodriguez, but he's got time. You know what I mean? I wouldn't mind seeing the gates slammed in his face 1 or 2 times. I think he would be the better for it. But I think that athletic ability, I think the speed and movement of Rodriguez, and I think, the fact that he is a pretty smart, adaptive fighter. Like, he deserves credit for changing up his game in small ways. Like, I would be surprised if he consented to play guard against Frankie Edgar.
Yeah.
I think he'll probably scramble free if Edgar works for a takedown off of those kicks. I think he will adjust what type of kicks he's throwing. He doesn't want to be thinking everything through the whole time, but I think he can make inter-round adjustments well enough to keep Edgar from dominating him with only 3 rounds to work. I think it would be a much harder fight for Yair if there were 5 rounds, but there aren't. So, I like Yair Rodriguez as well. I think it's a very close fight. I definitely think Frankie could win it, but and if he loses this, Frankie Edgar, if he loses this, all I want to see in the world is, since we were talking about thinking fighters and ones who think exceptionally well and better than pretty much anyone they fight, all I want to see is Demetrius Johnson versus Frankie Edgar at 135.
So I would love to see that fight. I would also love to see Frankie Edgar versus Dominic Cruz at 145 or 140 pound catch.
Oh, that would be so good.
Frankie
matches up so well with everyone in the lighter weight classes. You know what I mean? He's great, man. I didn't appreciate Frankie Edgar when I first came to MMA, but he is great, man. And there's a lot to like about what he does. Most people point to his heart and his resilience, but he's also just a very smart fighter, and he is both exciting and tactical. He's super well-rounded, and if you're really into thinking about strategy and game plan and tactics, watching Frankie Edgar build his game plan to success over the first 3 rounds of a fight is fascinating. Watching him fail on the first few takedowns, but turn that into a different kind of success, and then turn that success into a takedown, and then turn that, you know what I mean? Everything just builds so beautifully. You got to give Frankie Edgar his due. But both of us agree it's kind of a rough matchup for him at this stage in his career. We're both taking Yair Rodriguez, and that'll do it for this segment. When we come back, we are going to talk about Demian Maia versus Jorge Masvidal, another very complicated and very interesting matchup at welterweight, and one that probably should be 5 rounds as well, but that is the nature of MMA. You get a card that's just stacked with amazing fights, and unfortunately, only 2 of them at maximum get to be 5-rounders. So, Maia Masvidal after this break. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it. We are back. Welcome back to Heavy Hands. Let's talk about Demian Maia and Jorge Masvidal. In the first segment, and I believe when we talked about the fight I'm comparing it to, I compared this to Jacare Souza's fight with Robert Whittaker. And I think, much like that one, we have a dangerous striker versus somebody who is really reliant on their jiu-jitsu to get wins in Demian Maia. But we also have, just divisionally, really bad timing for a guy who definitely deserves a title shot. That happened with Jacare, and then he ran into a tough stylistic matchup in Robert Whittaker. Now we've got Demian Maia, who I think is probably the top guy to fight Tyron Woodley right now in the welterweight division. What's his win streak looking like? 6 in a row?
6 wins, yeah.
6 in a row. He's got guys like Matt Brown, Carlos Condit, Gunnar Nelson, Neil Magny. Like, it's solid wins. And then before that, he was beating like Rick Story, John Fitch, Dong Hyun Kim. Like, he's got a lot of good wins in this division. And yet, even though Tyron Woodley did not have a fight scheduled when this fight was made, for some reason, Demian accepted like a shot to earn his title shot, a fight to earn his title shot. And I just feel bad for him.
The UFC has zero intention of giving a 38 or 39-year-old Brazilian guy who doesn't knock people out a title shot if they can possibly avoid it. Like, as ridiculous as that is, I don't think there's any reasonable conclusion other than the idea that they do not want Demian Maia in the title discussion.
No, I agree. And
that sucks, but that seems to be the way that it is. And Maia just seems to be content with going out there and doing what he has to do. After his last win, he didn't even really push it. He's like, oh, I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm just gonna go out and I'm gonna keep winning. And you kind of have to respect that approach, even if it's not going to get him to where he wants to go, unless he just beats literally everybody else that's available.
Yeah, you respect it, but like I wish it wasn't that way. I wish Demian Maia wasn't such a nice fucking guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, he is just one of the best people in MMA. He is like the only fighter who is actively grateful when he doesn't have to hurt his opponents when they submit quickly. He's... Ooh.
Whoop.
He's
sorry.
He never interrupts podcasts with background noise. He's polite and well spoken in both Portuguese and English. He's just a good guy, Demian Maia, and it sucks that that polite. This is what politeness, and like willingness to work hard gets you in a sport in which a promoter is basically trying to exploit you and manipulate your career to their own ends.
Yeah, not a dang thing is what it gets you.
What about the matchup? Jorge Masvidal has also found new life in the welterweight division after being a lightweight for many, many years. He is currently on a 3-fight winning streak. The last one of which of those fights was the most impressive, one of, if not the most impressive wins of his career, when he knocked out Donald Cerrone in the second round. What do you make of this matchup between Masvidal, Can you hear my cat in the background?
I can, yes.
Jesus Christ.
So Masvidal actually has a good case right now for being on the last fight that Jorge Masvidal clearly lost, no controversy, was against Gilbert Melendez in 2011. Since then, he lost a decision to Rustam Khabilov that, frankly, if you're rewatching it, should probably have been Masvidal's win. There was a robbery, an actual robbery, a legit robbery lost to Al Iaquinta in April of 2015.
Wait a minute. Didn't you argue that Iaquinta deserved that win at the time?
I did, and I was dead wrong.
Okay. You've changed your mind.
Yeah, was absolutely incorrect about that.
Yeah, I also feel that...
It was one of those things, it was confirmation bias. I had picked Iaquinta beforehand.
Yeah, it happens a lot.
Like, I can see how you might score it for Iaquinta, but that was wrong. Absolutely wrong.
Yeah, I think I probably agree at this point.
Then there was a close loss to Benson Henderson, probably a win for Henderson, but a very, very close fight, and then a very, very close loss to Lorenz Larkin. That's it. That's all of the losses that he has suffered since 2011.
That is pretty goddamn crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it's totally insane that he has been this successful at this high level, having fought so many really good fighters over the years.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot recently about him sort of like his young journeyman, young veteran Gegard Mousasi, learning to harness a little more aggression and more of a mean streak in his recent fights. And I think that has been the biggest... Like, Jorge Masvidal has always been a guy who hangs with the best in the world. But, like, only recently, and especially with that win over Cerrone, has he, like, asserted himself as a guy who beats the best fighters in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how do you think he matches up with Demian Maia? I think, obviously, the big question here is takedown defense for Masvidal. According to Fight Metric, he's got 79% takedown defense. People who have gotten him down recently... Ross Pearson, surprisingly, though, of course, he did not manage.
That was Pearson catching a flying knee and then a kick.
Okay. Yeah, and didn't manage to hold him down. Ben Henderson got 3, but also did not manage to hold Masvidal down for any extended period of time. Cesar Ferreira, a very big middleweight, essentially got him down once. So really, it's most of the takedowns his opponents attempt, Masvidal stops. In fact, I think wrestling is probably still the most underrated aspect of Masvidal's game. He is a guy who holds it as a point of pride that he tries to, that he does take down at once every opponent he faces. He wants to out-wrestle everyone. And he is a guy who, if he doesn't want to be taken down, is very difficult to put on his back and even more difficult to hold there. But again, he has not fought Demian Maia, who I don't think Pat gets enough credit for, not just his jiu-jitsu, but especially his wrestling. Like, wrestling has been the big change in Demian Maia's game. And he talks about how he would have gone into wrestling these days if he hadn't found jiu-jitsu first. Like, he really loves it and has a passion for it, and it shows. And so we have to give credit to Maia's takedown ability versus, like the underrated wrestling versus the underrated defensive wrestling. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Maia is not just an extraordinary wrestler, but he's an extraordinary chain wrestler.
Yes.
And he blends those takedown chains. Like, if you can stuff Maia's initial shot, you've got a good chance of keeping the fight standing where you want it to be. If you can't stuff the initial shot, you are screwed. Yeah. You are absolutely screwed, because he excels if he can get a hold of even a single leg in open space at pushing you to the fence. And once you're at the fence, that is Maia's world. He is going to cycle between singles, doubles, trips, spinning around to rear waist locks, and from there he can do his favorite thing, which is hop on your back. He's got a vast array of options that he puts together in really creative, flowcharty kind of ways, if he can get a hold of you and if he can push you to the fence. If he can't, Maia is in serious trouble. Now, I think as much as he has improved as a wrestler over the last 5 or 6 years, the biggest benefit to Maia's game and what makes everything work is how good a pressure fighter he is. So he's got extraordinarily good pressure footwork for pushing his opponent back. So it's not just that he's doing a great job once he has a hold of you. He excels at putting his opponent in situations where he can get a hold of it.
He also hits pretty hard. Like, this is the thing that Maia does not get enough credit for. I think much like Frankie Edgar, he's not going to knock you out, but he hits hard enough that you have to respect his punches, and he backs up his feints and his pressure with a mixture of strikes and takedowns. Like, Demian Maia is genuinely a very good pressure fighter, despite only really adapting that skill set in the last few years. He's taken to it quite well. And I will say this, you said a vast array before on the ground. He has like a vast array of techniques he goes to. That is true, but I think it's more that like Demian Maia knows a vast array of things that he can do if he needs to, and more these days he does not need them.
Yeah, it's not that he has a vast array of things that he does on the ground. It's that when he gets you up against the fence, he has like 5 or 6 things that he cycles back and forth between in clever and creative ways. So
it looks like Ronda Rousey's takedown game, but with more, a wrestling style. But the way that there's always something to play off of your reaction to the first attempt and the second attempt.
Exactly. Yeah, he knows exactly how to combine those things together. But no, he's very meat and potatoes.
I think Maia is the Floyd Mayweather of grappling, like the late career Floyd Mayweather of grappling, where after his prime, Mayweather was like a dude with like 5 punches in his arsenal. Like he could do a lot of the things, he could do everything he used to do, but he had perfected these things so much and had built together such a simple and effective game out of a few tools that he almost never needed to go outside the box, where it was just like a lead right, a jab to the body, a jab to the head, a left hook, and then like the shoulder roll and the footwork. And he would add a new thing here and there for a fight if he needed it, but it was mostly slow pace, very controlled, just each attack playing off of the other. And the aura helps too, like the aura that, I'm fighting a guy who is better at this than I will ever be, allows him to sort of control you just with body language. And Maia has the same thing going for him. Like, nobody wants to go to the ground with Demian Maia. And once they get there, it's like 5 things. You know what I mean? Like, he'll get you, he'll usually land in half guard, he'll post in his head or his hands, he will turn half guard into reverse half guard, he'll push down your knee and go to mount, and if that doesn't work, he'll take your back. Like, everything is so simple that it's just beautiful to watch, because it looks like somebody demonstrating But they're in there against like a super skilled resisting opponent, but it looks like a demonstration. It looks like an exhibition. It's crazy. But it's crazy in how simple it is.
The way he just dismantled Gunnar Nelson with fundamentals was insane. And Nelson, one of the very best grapplers in that division, an extraordinary ADCC level competitor as a grappler, and Maia just schooled him. Whenever Maia had his hands on him, he schooled him. It was not competitive the second that the two guys started grappling.
And Carlos Condit, man. Mm-hmm. Like Carlos Condit, Jackson Winklejohn fighter, super well known for having super intelligent game plans. Even fighting against type, like when he fought Nick Diaz, a little bit like when he fought Robbie Lawler. Like Carlos Condit's an adaptable guy at a gym that specializes in game planning, and he has never really been out grappled like that I can think of. Like
he got controlled on top by GSP, but never just manhandled and finished like that.
Even there, he was substantially more effective off of his back than most people are against GSP. Like he is a very good MMA grappler who is very well prepared, and Maia just sliced through him like a knife through butter. Like it was absolutely easy. It took him 2 minutes to tap out one of the most experienced guys in the entire division.
Yeah, that looked. Condit had not been manhandled like that in literally a decade, since 2005, 2006, in that kind of space.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this matchup, Connor? How do you see this playing out here? We've got an increasingly exceptional striker in the form of Jorge Masvidal against late career Maia, who is the most terrifying takedown and control artist on the ground that exists in this division.
Yeah. So to me, it depends on a couple of X factors, and this is why this fight is so hard to predict, because the X factors are X factors. Like it's not known whether or not they will play a role or how they will play a role. One of them is Maia's stamina, which isn't great, especially later in his career. If he has to scramble a lot and work hard, then even in a 3-round fight, he is capable of gassing pretty badly. We saw that when he fought Rory McDonald. In longer fights, we saw it against Ryan LaFleur, where he was like dead tired for the last 2 rounds. It says a lot about Maia's skill that he can still win those fights a lot of the times, even after he gasses. But that's going to be a lot harder against a guy in Jorge Masvidal who is like a super consistent workhorse type of fighter who does not get tired easily at all. It also depends on how Masvidal approaches Maia, because I think Masvidal has sometimes in the past gotten into his own head, sort of patted himself on the back for not being finished or for not being hit clean. And I imagine that classic Masvidal would probably pat himself on the back for not being submitted by Maia and might be content to survive on the ground and to, not take too many risks in the scrambles. But that is something that Masvidal has overcome more and more recently. So if Masvidal can push the pace after the first round against Maia, then he can absolutely beat Maia up on the feet and deny the takedowns and punish Maia for attempting them. But if he doesn't, like if he thinks, okay, I got to be really careful here, then that's a window of opportunity for Maia.
Yeah, those are all true. Those are all true points. I think this fight is going to be uncompetitive in phases.
Yeah.
And extremely competitive over the course of the whole fight.
Yeah.
Like on the feet, when Masvidal is sticking and moving and tossing his jab in Maia's face and following up with that sharp cross and tapping away with kicks and keeping his feet moving under him, I don't think Maia has any answers for that. And I think he's going to take a lot of real ugly shots as he's trying to pressure Masvidal.
Yeah.
But when the fight gets to the fence, when he can back Masvidal up, then I think the fight is going to look equally uncompetitive in that regard. So to me, the question is, who wins larger chunks of the fight? Because I think you're right that as the fight goes on, Masvidal should take over. But can he finish Maia? I don't think so. If Rory McDonald in 2014, a much bigger, better wrestler who works at an even quicker pace than Masvidal, if he couldn't finish off a dead tired Maia in the 5th round or in the 3rd round of their fight, if Ryan LaFleur couldn't do it, I don't think Masvidal is going to. So at that point, the question is, who wins the first 2 rounds? I think Maia probably wins the first. I think he gets Masvidal down and does that. The second is going to be the swing round. And the question is, at what point in that second round, either can Maia finish him before he gets exhausted, I don't think so. I think Masvidal's pretty dang good at surviving.
Yeah.
But at what point does Masvidal start to get it going?
Yeah, and maybe can Masvidal finish Maia? Because if he fights the way he fought against Donald Cerrone, then you have to say that he is more dangerous than Rory McDonald. Like less careful, less cautious, less methodical, and more just all-out aggressive. But that would be basing a lot on just one performance.
Well, and the Ellenberger fight as well. But I'm not calling Masvidal a paper tiger here. Nothing like that. And I'm not questioning the quality of his competition. I'm questioning the type of competition that he's had going back his last, 5-6 fights. Like, these have all been guys that were suited stylistically to the kind of game that Masvidal has enjoyed playing.
Yes.
You know? Like, Cerrone, Ellenberger, Pearson, Larkin, even Henderson, Cesar Ferreira, Al Iaquinta. The last guy that Masvidal fought who really wanted to play a markedly different game than the one with which Masvidal was really comfortable was probably Pat Healy or Khabilov or Michael Chiesa.
Yeah.
Like, so we're talking a long time.
And none of these guys are Demian Maia.
Yeah. I mean, Henderson was the last guy to really, really, really try to push a very takedown-heavy game plan against Masvidal.
And I think Maia is a substantially better takedown artist and much better control on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, Al Iaquinta struggled to make his takedown game work at all against Masvidal. Iaquinta is nowhere near the wrestler that Maia is. So I think
Maia's a big guy too. We have to consider his size and strength. I mean, this is a guy
probably close to 200 pounds.
Yeah, he's a very large welterweight.
So there are a lot of X factors here, but like my basic thought is that this is going to be non-competitive in stretches. And the question is which stretches come first and which stretches come last and who gets more of them.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go with Maia with zero confidence whatsoever. And some of that is predicated on the idea that Maia too is becoming a little more aggressive here with his ground game. I think if we go back to like the Yakovlev fight, a guy that Maia absolutely could have submitted. We see Maia who doesn't want to scramble at all, who doesn't want to give any risks. I think more recently with Nelson and Brown and Condit, we have seen Maia more willing to let his opponents move so that he can attack them when they think they're escaping. And I think if he can do that kind of stuff against Masvidal, who really relies on like wrestling style scrambles to return to his feet, I think he might actually submit him. Masvidal is very good at submission defense. He has been submitted a long time ago, but a lot of this is just based on the idea that it's Demian Maia and not any of the other guys he's faced. You know what I mean? Like the best submission grappler he's faced, the most dangerous submission grappler he's faced in a long time is probably Pat Healy.
I mean, I think Cerrone and Ferreira are
but Cerrone in a different kind of way. Like Cerrone in like a hurt you and then finish you, or like playing guard and lock you up in a submission. Like the most dangerous guy who's faced who will force a grappling game. Like, because Ben Henderson will force it, but he's not been a great submission threat for years.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I wanted to give Cerrone his due in that regard. He's not a submission first fighter.
No, but he is definitely a submission artist. Yeah, that is fair. But like, it's just none of them are Demian Maia. But there's a reason that I feel the parallels between this fight and the Jacare-Whitaker fight, because it is potentially a very bad matchup for Demian Maia if he can't get those takedowns for more than 2 rounds, or if he can't finish Masvidal early. Yeah. Because he'll be in a world of hurt on the feet with Masvidal.
Yeah, this is, man. I think I'm also going with Maia for exactly those reasons. I think that a lot of Masvidal's increase in volume and offense has been predicated on the fact that he's been fighting guys who aren't really going to trouble him all that much in areas where he's not super comfortable.
Right.
And I think if he starts trying to, because a lot of that offense has come in the clinch, it's come in the pocket, it's come in ranges where he has been more or less comfortable with that, you know, like, and if he's in those ranges with Maia, then he's got to be worrying about what Maia can do back to him with takedowns and clinch control.
Yeah.
and especially pushing him to the fence. And Masvidal has not really fought anybody who has tried to pressure him super hard. Pearson pressured him in bursts.
Pearson sucks at pressure, though. Like, let's be honest. That is always the way to beat Ross Pearson, is to make him pressure you. It's not something he's very comfortable doing. It is all that Demian Maia wants to do these days.
Yeah, so I think, I guess I'm going with Maia, with the caveat that it would not surprise me at all if Masvidal were either able to finish him late or were able to get a lot of offense, enough offense going to win big chunks of rounds in between getting controlled.
Similar to the McDonald fight.
Yes, very much so. So that's kind of my pick, but like I expect this to be a good one. I expect it to be real tension filled with lots of big momentum shifts.
Other X factor, Maia does what he did to Rory McDonald in the first round and hurts him with a punch. But Masvidal's more prone to getting hurt early, so Maia knocks him out in round 1. That is definitely going to happen.
the Maia round 1 overhand left knockout would be my everything.
It would be. I mean, you have to give him a title shot. Like, come on, you got to respect the balls. Yeah. You got to give him a title shot for that. It's a tough fight, man. I feel bad for Maia. Like, I want to see him get to that title shot. I think he is one of the very best fighters in the world at this weight. And it's a tough one for him, but not unwinnable. Both of us like him to beat Jorge Masvidal. We'll see if it actually plays out that way next weekend. Let's go ahead and take another break. When we come back, as promised, we're going to get into a little bit of boxing talk. Huge heavyweight contest over the weekend between Anthony Joshua, Britain's rising boxing superstar, and Wladimir Klitschko, the man who ruled the heavyweight division for about 10 years straight before now suffering 2 recent losses. It was a fantastic fight. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to do so. And if you have seen it, or if you haven't, stay tuned for the next segment. We're going to break it all down. Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are 1 or 2 of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. You can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and Stitcher, things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show. We are back. Anthony Joshua, Wladimir Klitschko, 11 rounds of tactical war between 2 of the best heavyweights in the world right now. Overall thoughts on this one, Pat?
Just that it was exactly the fight that boxing needed.
Absolutely.
Especially out of its heavyweight division.
It's been a pretty good year for boxing already, but like the marquee fights, everything is going to be a disappointment compared to Mayweather-Pacquiao in terms of box office numbers and everything, because that fight marinated way longer than it should have. It was like a super aged steak where it didn't really taste as good as you wanted it to, but they aged it for 300 days. Like, you got to take a bite. The other marquee fights, like Ward Kovalev, huge fight, amazing fight between 2 of the best in the world, only did 160,000 pay-per-view buys. And a fight like this, this is a marquee fight that actually generated huge interest, which makes me feel good, because I don't want boxing to go through an even deeper slump than it already has been for the past decade.
Yeah, that's it's just been real hard to build kind of sustained momentum. And I think with Anthony Joshua, you finally have a guy who can make that happen, because this is a star-driven sport. And for boxing to succeed, it needs stars. And I think Joshua is the first guy, like, in a long time, who can appeal in ways that are not just about the brand, like the brand or the fighter itself. Like, Mayweather's brand was about Mayweather, and in really brilliant ways. But Joshua, I think, can be something more than that. And this was the fight that's going to put him on the map to be that star. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as a fight, I think that's let's focus a little more on that. Like, this was outstanding. What a freaking fight this was.
Yeah, it was like momentum shift the movie. Like, the whole fight was just a constant back and forth between 2 guys who were, I think, in some arguably the best form of their career. Like, Klitschko showed up in good shape. He looked like he knew what he needed to do. He dealt with adversity, I think, better than he has throughout most of his career. And and hasn't had to deal with adversity of any kind in a long time, and he dealt with it extremely well. So did Joshua. Like, it looked like it was going to be. So let's say, like, last week, you thought that he was going to knock Klitschko out. You were right. I thought that I didn't think that it was not going to happen per se, but I am always hesitant to like pick a guy who has not been tested yet. And it is very tough when the first real test of your career is like the best heavyweight in the past decade. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's a tough thing. That's a tough deal for a young guy who has kind of been protected with the matchmaking. And it almost looked like I was going to be right for having that hesitation, because Anthony Joshua hurt Wladimir Klitschko, and I believe got only a 10-9 round despite knocking Klitschko down, because immediately after he hurt him, he swarmed him like crazy. He threw everything he had at Klitschko, who stayed pretty tight defensively, gathered his wits, got his distance back, and then started to pour it on himself, and ended up hurting an exhausted Joshua several times at the end of the round in which he had been knocked down, then came back in the next round to knock Joshua down, and he sat him down hard. Like, the Klitschko knockdown was a little sort of like he got hurt and wobbled and then got pushed over by a combination. The Klitschko knockdown was a clean right hand. The doctor
a clean right hand, and then a left hook as Joshua was going down. He landed a follow-up left hook as Joshua was mid-air falling.
Yeah, Vovchenchkin-esque. The Klitschko right hand, man, that's the Dr. Steel Hammer special. Like, you do not want to catch that shit clean on the temple. And so I thought it was going to be like sort of a McGregor-Diaz situation, where he gassed himself out going for the kill, and then he was just going to get drowned by the savvy veteran. It ended up being more like McGregor-Diaz 2, where Joshua, it was almost like both guys in this fight woke each other up with their successes. Like, Joshua woke up an angry, aggressive Klitschko by hurting him, and then Klitschko convinced the angry, aggressive Joshua to go back to boxing by hurting him in return. And it took him a few rounds to get his legs back and to regain his gas tank, but the advantage of youth is that you can do that with comparatively little trouble. Once Joshua got his energy back, he fought a lot more intelligently. He was still a little more aggressive than Klitschko, but then it was all about him controlling the distance, hitting the body, and not going wild when he did buzz Klitschko on a few occasions.
Yeah, I was impressed by the fact that Joshua was able to regain his composure after something where, frankly, most young fighters facing the first real adversity of their careers, a lot of fighters would have crumbled there.
Absolutely.
Joshua didn't, and he did a real good job of a few. He wasn't like a technical marvel in this fight, but he did a few things that I thought were really worth noting. The first was that he did not allow Klitschko to dictate the clinches. Right? Like, Joshua was really proactive about, if we're in the range where Klitschko might grab me, I'm going to grab him instead. And that way, he's not the one wearing on me with that. I'm going to be wearing on him. Yeah,
and there were several occasions where Klitschko went for the clinch and Joshua got like an inside tie. Would get like biceps control and land a couple of shots and not allow Klitschko to just lay on his neck like he would to most smaller guys.
Exactly. He made Klitschko work for those clinch exchanges that Klitschko uses to wear his opponents down. He makes them carry his weight there. Joshua instead forced Klitschko to carry his weight, and he hit him, especially to the body, in those spaces. And those were the things that helped to wear Klitschko down as the fight went on. Like, the second was the body punching, that Joshua stuck to that game plan. He knew he was going to throw that right hand to the body from the first round of this fight, and he stuck to it.
Yep.
Except when he got buzzed in that, what was that, the 6th or the 7th round?
Yeah, he got dropped in the 6th after dropping Klitschko in the 5th.
Yeah, so except for about the 4.5 minutes of fight time after that, Joshua was working the body. He wasn't throwing a ton of volume to the body, but he was working it. He was making sure that Klitschko was feeling that. And that paid off later in the fight, because Klitschko had done a very good job of using his lead hand to slap down Joshua's right.
Yeah.
As the fight went on, it was eventually Joshua's right hand that started landing cleanly into the 10th and the 11th round.
Yeah, he did a lot of, too. Like, Klitschko is all about defending the head. Like, every defensive reaction he makes is about pulling his head out of range. And he leaves his body behind. I thought Joshua did a fantastic job of, like, countering the Klitschko jab, slipping, and then countering to the body, rather than trying to throw it over the top as Klitschko was leaning away. I think it made it easier. Not only did it slow Klitschko down a bit, but it made it easier for him to then land the occasional cross counter over the top. because he was varying his targets with that. The right hand of the body was money for Joshua in this fight. It was just a brilliant performance from him. The technical thing, I think it does deserve to be underscored, that it's not as if Anthony Joshua came in here and outclassed Klitschko with technical superiority. Like, of the two, Klitschko looked like largely the better boxer, better setups for his strikes, better feints, better footwork for the most part. Joshua, really, a lot of it comes down to youth and ability to regain his gas tank, to refill it by surviving and hitting really hard and moving really fast, the things that Klitschko no longer has access to. But the fact that he showed the sort of veteran savvy to stick to a game plan that made sense, and also to go back to that game plan after briefly abandoning it by hurting Klitschko, after, like, the consequences for him abandoning the game plan were big. It wasn't like he abandoned it and then it stopped working and he had to convince himself to go back to it. He abandoned it and then very nearly lost the fight as a result. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he was able to get back on track against Klitschko, who, again, looked fantastic. Like, Klitschko was in good shape. He was pouring it on. He wasn't wasting his energy the way Joshua did after hurting him. He was just picking his shots and just nailing Joshua for like 3 rounds straight after round 6. He was catching these big shots here and there, consistently hurting Joshua. And the fact that under that kind of sustained fire, Joshua was able to go back to his game plan really, really impressed me. Like, I couldn't expect it before this fight because I hadn't seen it. But now that I've seen it, it gives you it gives you so much more information about what kind of fighter Anthony Joshua really is. He said in that post-fight interview, boxing is about character. And this is the fight that let us finally see what Anthony Joshua's character in the ring really is.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I mean, I thought Joshua did a good job of using exactly the right technical tools for the task. Yeah, you're right. Technique was not why he beat Klitschko, but he did enough things right and in fundamentally sound ways. Like, I think part of the reason why Joshua was able to go back to his game plan and why he was able to get his gas back is because he is a fundamentally sound puncher.
Yeah.
Right. Like, he throws good, clean shots with good technique that do not take an inordinate amount of energy. So he was able to produce volume without further draining his gas tank back below where it needed to be.
He was able to keep himself in the fight, not be completely overwhelmed. Like, Klitschko could have swarmed him, but he forced Klitschko not to swarm him because he was still responding. And He responded in an efficient enough way that he could slowly dig himself back out of the hole while still keeping himself alive, alive in the water. And he did, it was a nice combination. It's not like Anthony Joshua is a bad technical fighter. He's just pretty rudimentary for the time being. He still looks like a young amateur, like his style is still coming together. And but he had a few really nice little tricks that I thought were really smart. Like, aside from the body punching, throwing his right hand and then using a little bit of that athletic ability to leap in with a shift left hook was something that worked for him over and over in this fight, as Klitschko would pull his head away and sort of lean back away from the right hand. Joshua keyed in on that very early, and a lot of the best shots he landed were lunging after Klitschko with the left hand, knowing that once Klitschko gets put onto the back foot, once he's really pulling back, he's not going to counter. He's not in a position to do so. He's only worried about protecting his chin. And that Joshua did a great job of getting around that, throwing that left hook and then mixing it up, setting up the right hand to the body so that Klitschko wasn't sure when to lean back and when to stay in there and try to counter. It was a smart fight that also took advantage of his biggest edge, which is the athletic ability and the youth. So I was fantastic. Like, I couldn't have been happier with the way it played out. I was like doing I don't know how anyone else gets when they watch fights, but like, when it's a really good one, I do like a nervous ADD kid in math class, like bouncing my knee. I'm like leaning forward in my seat. I'm like stroking my chin very intently, like just absolutely absorbed. And when a fight does that to you, I think it's a very good sign. Yeah,
this was I yelled when that uppercut landed.
Oh my God, me too.
In the 11th round,
I did a Macaulay Culkin. I did a Macaulay Culkin and put both hands to my face. I was like, oh shit. It was a very, very dramatic uppercut. It was, if you haven't seen this fight, like, you have to watch it. And that uppercut in round 11, the one that starts the surprisingly long finishing sequence from Joshua, because I'm surprised that Klitschko stayed in his feet after that uppercut. But it was a monster of a punch. A monster. One final thing. What do you think about the stoppage? Some people were complaining about it.
I thought it was perfectly fine. I thought that Klitschko had taken more than enough punishment, and in fact had really been given the benefit of the doubt before that point.
I would compare it to the Jacare Whittaker stoppage, in that, like, the way the fight was playing out, the timing of the stoppage was bizarre, because, like, the flurry that actually caused the ref to step in was like 1 clean punch to the body and like 5 missed shots to the head. But and with Klitschko still trying to defend himself, he was still trying to be active. But what had happened previously to that would have been enough to stop the fight anyway. Like, I was actually shocked that the referee allowed it to continue after the first knockdown, because I thought Klitschko looked terrible. His legs were gone. His arms were like hanging loose. His head was kind of lolling back and forth. He looked totally out of it. And he may have been knocked out right then and there cold if the referee hadn't taken like an additional 8 seconds to check his gloves, because they were 2 kind of long counts. But I can't complain about the stoppage, even though it was a weird one and not very perfectly done, because Klitschko was on his way out, It is what it is. Sort of a sad end, but there is a rematch clause, and I would absolutely be willing to see this fight again, because it was fantastic. And it's not like Klitschko couldn't beat Anthony Joshua, He definitely proved that he could. He fought a really good fight, and he looked way better than he did in his fight with Tyson Fury. Like, he looked better than I think he has in a few years. He looked phenomenal. And Anthony Joshua was just that little bit better, and that little bit more dangerous, and used his youth and stayed smart despite having those physical advantages. So just a fight that you absolutely need to see if you haven't seen it yet. And if you did see it, watch it again, because that's what I'm going to do probably today, because talking about it has gotten me all amped up thinking about seeing that fight again. Let's go ahead and wrap up then. We've got a very big show coming next week, so make sure you visit us again here at Heavy Hands. We're going to be talking about the heavyweight title fight at UFC 211 between Stipe Miocic and Junior Dos Santos. We're going to talk about the women's strawweight title fight between Ioana Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. And we're going to talk about also the flyweight fight between Henry Cejudo and Sergio Pettis. So it is going to be a big one. It's going to be fun. Make sure you join us then. We're also going to have a bonus episode coming out very soon, if not already by the time you listen to this. So check us out on Patreon to hear that. This week we will be using that bonus episode to talk about 5-rounders, was it, Pat?
Yep, 5-rounders versus 3-rounders and long boxing matches too. Just a little brief one, and then we'll do a longer bonus next week to talk about the prelims for UFC 211, right?
Yep. We're going to try and give you guys a little extra content this week, so make sure you check us out. $3 a month on Patreon gets you at least 50% more Heavy Hands than you would get on a regular basis. 2 bonus episodes every month, if not more. And Phil McKenzie and I from Bloody Elbow at Evil Greg Jackson are going to be working on another bonus thing for Heavy Hands as well. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Pat, before we go, what do you have coming out this week?
Not a damn thing.
All right.
I'm just reading and prepping for a new episode of Fall of Rome next week, and for the next podcast series. I'm a dozen books in, man. I got about 30 more to go. Oh my God.
I don't miss being in school, Pat. I like to read, but I don't miss doing it on a schedule.
Well, but see, this is the benefit, man, is I get to pick and choose the things that I want to read.
That is true.
And I get to do it for work. So right now I'm reading a book on the printing revolution in early modern Europe. I've got one on that's like a micro history of a merchant who was operating between 1495 and 1520. Like, it's all about his business and how he operated and how like the economy changed around this dude. Like, I've got a whole stack of books that I'm into, but I get to choose them as long as I define my project right.
Yeah, there's always the ideal job is always going to feel like work, but it's when you can at least. You can still get excited about your work that you've got a good one, right? Like, it's always going to feel like a slog at times. It's a lot of shit to read. But at least you get to choose it. At least you get that choice. I have no idea what I'm doing this week, but I will be coming out with something. I'm still working on a piece about sort of how much is enough for fighters in their long careers, and also what place do we have as fans to tell fighters that they should retire. I'm going to be talking about, Diego Sanchez and Jake Ellenberger, both of whom fought last week in that one. And aside from that, I don't really know what else I'm doing, but it'll probably be some kind of UFC 211 content coming out soon. So keep aware of that. Keep aware. I don't know what's happening to me, Pat. I was a much better broadcaster a couple months ago. I swear to God I was. Keep your eyes peeled. Check out Bloody Elbow for those pieces. They should be coming out soon. And, of course, next week there will be a UFC 211 preview on Sherdog.com. I only say that now because I'm already working on it, which is a rare thing for me, Pat. Working on something before it's due is...
ahead of time?
Yeah, is that what they call it? Ahead of time, I think is how it's pronounced. It's a new concept for me, but I am enjoying it. It makes a lot of sense. It frees up your schedule. So thank you guys for tuning in. That was Heavy Hands, episode 15X. I can't remember. And UFC 211 is right on the horizon. Come back next week and we will talk about the biggest fights from that card. And make sure, again, to check out our Patreon for all those bonus episodes we're putting out. All that delicious, delicious content. And we will see you next time. If you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.